Okay, this is one of the few times I will actually issue a content warning, but this video deals with the subjects of sexual abuse and rape. I may also include a few rape jokes, however, they're not intended to cause harm. I know some rape victims that use gallows humor to deal with the trauma, and it helps lighten the mood when I join in with that humor, which is the reason I may include some in this video. If either of those are subjects you would rather avoid, there's no shame in clicking off the video. I'll see y'all next time. But for those of you who wish to stick around, let's get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome back. So I never discussed religion on this channel, but I discovered a video from a woman who goes by the Transformed Wife. Her name is Lori Alexander, and she's a Christian woman who makes videos for Christian women. However, if there was ever a poster child for doing Christianity wrong, this woman is definitely it. Now let me preface this by saying that I am a Christian myself, so that's the perspective for which I will respond to this video, because not only does this woman give Christians a bad name, she is also sending the most harmful message to women that I've ever seen. So without further ado, let's get into this shit. And yes, I cuss a lot. Doesn't make me any less Christian before anyone says anything.
Hello.
Hello.
Today I want to talk about if women should have sex with their husbands when they don't feel like it.
The jokester in me wants to say, well, duh, right after she's done making my sandwich. But the real answer is no. Full stop.
I've been accused of promoting marital rape.
Well, I wonder why the fuck that is.
And women frequently ask me, should wives have sex when they don't feel like it?
Yeah, you already said that.
Like, brother, you know. Wives should not have to have sex when they feel like it. No, they should not. This is the thought process of most women today.
Oh, you mean women who want to consent to sex before they allow a man to stick their dick inside them? Fucking feminists.
Well, let's just ponder this a little bit.
What is there to ponder? I literally answered this question with a one-syllable word.
Should your husband go to work every day and work hard and provide for his family if he doesn't feel like it?
Depends on how many paid sick days he has left.
Should you not prepare your children food because you don't feel like it?
Well, Cassie knows how to operate the microwave, and my back hurts from sitting on the couch all day after using my sick day since I didn't feel like going to work.
Let's say your refrigerator is bare. Should you not go shopping because you just don't feel like it?
Well, I might push it off till morning and order Jimmy John's for everyone, so yeah.
Should you not clean the toilet ever? Because, ew, that's just a gross job and you just don't feel like it.
Well, my wife gets away with that. She just waits till I get home and then hands me my toothbrush.
And you could just go, if you all were sitting in a classroom in front of me, we can go on and on and on about all the things that we do in life that we don't feel like doing.
And then I could stand up in said class and tell you what a bullshit analogy that is for a woman not wanting to suck her husband's dick every time he asks. There is a huge fucking difference between household responsibilities and sex. One of those involves a little time and effort, the other involves someone else invading your body for pleasure. The only thing these two have in common is my wife frequently tells me to do all of them by myself. And I hope y'all enjoyed that joke because it likely cost me a month of sex.
Stupid! Worth it.
And how come sex is this sacred cow to most women, and if they don't feel like having sex with their husbands, they should not have sex with their husbands?
Hang on a damn second. You constantly preach about waiting until marriage because sex is sacred between a husband and a wife, but now that you're married, it's no longer sacred? I'm flabbergasted that I even have to explain to you what's wrong with that sentence. Then again, it shouldn't have to explain to a woman in her fucking 40s what's wrong with this entire video.
And by the way, how could I promote marital rape when I don't teach men?
Oh, for fuck's sake, do I seriously need to explain to you that men are not the only ones who rape? Telling women this does two things. It'll either make them submit to the marital rape no matter the circumstances are, or some of these women will rape their husbands if it's the husband that doesn't want sex. If you think that it's not rape just because you don't teach men, then you think that only men can rape and you're in no position to teach anybody anything.
I've never once ever said or written, yes, men, rape your wives. Take sex from them whenever you want.
You are advocating for marital rape, you're just not using the words marital rape. You're telling women that if their husbands want sex, they have to give it to them, even if they don't want to. And having sex with someone who doesn't want it is rape!
I have never said that. I don't teach men. I only teach women.
Doesn't fucking matter.
I teach women what the Bible commands. The Bible commands that we do not deprive our husbands of sexual intimacy.
Whereas you're not wrong, you are taking that way out of context.
This is from God, it's not from me.
Oh, well then let's take a look at the Bible right quick and see what God had to say about it. 1 Corinthians 7, 3-5 reads, "The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband, and in the same way the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." Now, like I said, I'm a Christian, and people like to assume that the Bible was written to force women to be submissive. However, that is not the case in a lot of interpretations. I'll link an article in the description that explains the verses I quoted in greater detail, but the short of it is this. Men and women need to fulfill their marital obligations to each other equally. That's what the first verse means. The part about the husband not owning his own body, and the same thing for the wife, means that the husband cannot force his bodily needs, like sex, onto his wife without her consent as well. In other words, you must submit your bodies to each other so that neither of you are doing anything you haven't consented to. If you look at the fine print, the next verse says not to deprive your spouse. However, idiots like the transformed wife and some denominations of Christianity confuse the words deprive and refuse. God's command to not deprive your spouse of things like sex does not mean that you must consent every single time he or she asks for sex. It means that you need to satisfy that need for each other as often as you both consent to do so, as to satisfy the body's need for sex and intimacy. And the last verse is one of the reasons why regular sex is healthy. Body needs sex, and if you deprive your spouse of it, they will be tempted to cheat on you more and more as time goes on.
Hey! Mrs. Patel! Can you jerk your fucking husband off once in a while so he doesn't come back to my rub and tug ever again?
I could go on and on about this, but time to move on before we forget we have a video.
And if you want to have a miserable life, lazy life, then you live your life by your feelings.
Well, I'm a workaholic, so my feelings keep me moving on a regular basis. And that's not just a joke. It's at the point my wife is irritated by how much I move around.
You don't feel like giving your husband sex for a year? Then go, fine. Don't give your husband sex for a year. But see how great your marriage is after a year.
That statement is so vague I have a million ways I could respond, but I'll just say this. If you're denying your spouse for literally no given reason, that is when you're committing the sin of depriving your spouse of sex. But the way Miss Alexander puts it is suggesting to women that since she only teaches women, that they have to submit to their husband's request for sex no matter what, which is again, marital rape.
We live our lives by doing what's right, by obeying God, even when we don't feel like it. Yes, and that even includes sex.
No, it doesn't. Seriously, read the article in the description and get some actual biblical education before you try to teach anyone else.
How long does it take?
Well, for me, about as long as it took you to ask that question, but that's not the fucking point.
One woman wrote me and asked me if her husband had raped her.
I swear to God, if this story involves any kind of sexual activity after she said no and you say that it's not rape, I'm gonna kick off.
Because she had told him she didn't want to have sex. And when she woke up in the middle of the night, he was having sex with her. So she wanted to know if that was marital rape. And I said, well, do you feel like you need to call the police and have him locked in jail?
She said no!
Because if true rape is when you're assaulted and against your will by some stranger and you feel like he's worthy of being put in prison.
Are you simple? Is she simple?
Yes. No, she doesn't want to doesn't want to call the authorities and put him in jail because he woke her up in the middle of the night and was having sex with her.
Can he be forgiven for what he did? Yes, he can, as long as he never does it again. But that is between the wife and her husband, and she has the right to put him in jail for what he did. She explicitly told him no.
In fact, my husband was telling me sometimes men just, in the middle of the night, there's a woman, their wife, laying next to them, and they just start wanting to have sex with them. And they're not completely woken up. They're not thinking straight.
I'm not going to deny that happens sometimes. Hell, my wife once woke me up for sex, and after we finished, she then woke up and told me she had been asleep the whole time. However, here's the factor that determines whether or not that's rape. Let's say for sake of argument that the woman's husband you mentioned earlier was half asleep or fully asleep and didn't realize he was doing that. If his wife wakes him up and says,
"Hey, I told you no earlier,"
and he stops, apologizes, and explains that he was asleep, then they should call it good and he should go finish off in the bathroom while also making sure he never does it again. However, if he keeps going after she says stop, or if this happens on a frequent basis when she's told him not to fuck her while she's asleep, then that is definitely marital rape, and she could decide how to handle this situation, up to and including having him charged for it if she feels that's the best option. But the absence of a federal charge does not mean that he didn't rape her. If you actually believe that, you're stupid. Full stop.
They just have this need to want sex, and so they start having sex with their wives. Now at this point, the wife can either say, "Honey, I'm just really tired, how about in the morning?" or go along with it and have a great time. Sometimes those are the best times, you know?
Yes, that happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen from your husband climbing on top of you and shoving it in one of several holes when you just said no. Furthermore, these women have the right to simply say no. Their husbands also have a godly duty to respect their wives' bodies, which sometimes means spanking the monkey a few times until she's ready to go for a ride.
Often when we obey God instead of what we want, that's where we find the blessings.
That literally sounds like something a Catholic priest would say while one of his choir boys is bobbing his head underneath his priest robes.
And so when you clean your toilet, you have the blessing of a clean toilet.
Well, at least until after I get home after eating lunch at Taco Bell.
When you're not depriving your husband, you have a blessing of a husband that's very happy with you for not depriving him.
Yeah, he may have forced himself inside you and ripped a new hole inside your vagina while you begged him to stop, but at least he's happy that you didn't deprive him.
And when your husband goes to work, even though he doesn't feel like it, he has a blessing of receiving a paycheck.
Wait. Your husband gets a paycheck? Mine gets stolen every week by a bunch of assholes who are all coincidentally named Bill.
So instead of living our lives by our feelings and our want-tos, let's live our lives by being obedient to God and doing what He calls us to do, even when we don't feel like it.
You know, people like you are the reason no one wants to follow Christianity anymore. You make it sound like we aren't even meant to be happy in this life. We just do what God wants. So here's some better advice for my fellow Christians out there. Do what God asks of you, but don't listen to these brainwashed, oversaved religious nutjobs who misquote the Bible and try to trap you in a miserable existence because God said so.
As a new mother, you wake up every couple hours to nurse your baby, even though you don't feel like it at all, you're exhausted, but you do it because you love your baby.
Fuck me, and I thought Riley Dennis was terrible at making analogies that had nothing to do with the original point.
And this is how we should be with our husbands. We are to be husband lovers. We want to satisfy them sexually.
Yes, but that doesn't mean giving in every single time he asks.
They can't have sex with anybody else. We live in a highly sexualized culture. They see, you go anywhere and you see immodestly dressed women, and in the supermarkets you see just everywhere they're assaulted by sexuality and scantily clad women.
It's called self-control, you dumb bitch. I see these sexy women in the supermarket as well, but that's never put me in a situation where I had to bend my wife over the frozen burritos and fuck her on the spot. And if your husband is constantly horny because he sees these women, then he needs some serious therapy.
They should be able to have sex with their wives when they want it.
Wives just don't have a say in when that is, apparently.
It doesn't take much time or effort even, but it makes them happy.
Well, of course it does, but do you know what makes us happier? When our wives want sex as well. No one enjoys sex when their wife is screaming for freedom from underneath them, unless you're, what's it called? Oh yeah, a rapist!
And this is what God calls us to do as their helpmeet women. So don't live your life by your feelings. Instead, live your life in obedience to the Lord, because you love your husband, because you love the Lord God Almighty.
Again, even God said that it had to be mutual, not that only the husband decides how, who, what, where, when, and why, while the wife asks no questions.
And He's worthy. He calls us to deny ourselves, and Paul says that He disciplines His body for the purpose of godliness. Discipline your body for the purpose of godliness. Don't do just what you want, you feel like doing. Do the right thing.
Oh, you hear that, babe? Stop crying when it hurts as you're having flashbacks about the abuse you suffered as a teenager. Do the right thing. Fuck, this woman is stupid.
So anyway, stop depriving your husband, and let's not talk about marital rape. Me teaching marital rape, because I don't.
You literally fucking do.
Me teaching women to not deprive their husbands sexually. does not promote marital rape.
But you're not teaching them to simply not deprive their husbands. You're telling these women that they're required to submit to sex whenever their husbands ask them to do so, even if they don't want to have sex. And if they don't want to have sex, but they're required for whatever bullshit reason, it is rape.
It's funny how they like to twist things and make everything so ugly.
If anyone is twisting the words of God, it's you who is taking the verses I read earlier, ignoring everything that suggests the husband is equally as submissive to the wife as she is to him, and telling women that they have an obligation to agree to sex every time their husbands ask. Your message is harmful to women, your interpretation of those verses is wrong, and you need to seriously step back, rethink your position, and when you can come back and think like an adult, we can have a discussion about this. Anyway, I'm done with this video. I can't take any more of this woman's insane babbling. Like I said, don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. If you're curious about what the Bible actually meant with those verses, check out the link in the description. But anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button, share the video on social media because God commanded you to do so. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel as it is your wifely duty. You can follow me on Twitter at hey_dude77, and I will see y'all in the next one. Catch y'all later.